Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the regular meeting of the Executive Committee for Peninsula Clean Energy. It's Monday, January 12th. Let's call this meeting to order.
Roll call.
Roll call, yes.
When I call your jurisdiction, if you'll please state your name. San Mateo County, Atherton,
Rick DeGolia.
Brisbane,
Colleen Mackin,
Burlingame, Hillsborough,
Leslie Ragsdale,
Menlo Park,
Betsy Nash,
Millbrae, San Bruno,
Marty Medina.
San Carlos.
John Dugan.
Thank you, and we have a quorum.
Fantastic. Do we have any public comment? No, sir. No. All right.
None online.
Okay, action to set the agenda and to approve the consent agenda items.
so moved.
Second. Okay.
Second was Mackin. Or
Either one.
DeGolia. Got it. Thank you.
All right, we don't have to do a roll call here, so
Sure
fantastic. And so all in favor?
Aye.
Any against? All right. Now we're at the regular agenda. We got a distraction over there, but that's okay.
It's all right. We're good.
We'll keep on moving ahead.
You're doing great.
All right. First item, the chair report. I don't have anything, or I'm sorry, we have Nick here to, I'm out of order here for a second. That caffeine kicked in, quite a bit.
How many donuts have you had?
One donut and, 1 cup of coffee here, so, as I sit here in, instead of with Donna here, I really don't have anything to report. It's my understanding that Sean will be joining us later. But however, it looks like, Nick, do you have anything to say on that or not?
On the CEO report?
Yeah, no,
No, I think she's planning to join shortly and we'll give the CEO report at
Exactly.
the end or when she joins.
okay, we have item 5.
That is me. This is an administrative issue as we kind of align our policies to what we're practicing here at PCE. That's one of my goals as council is to align what we have in our policies with the law in some instances, and just to kind of keep us calibrated in terms of what other CCAs are doing as well. And so we're bringing this to the executive committee, the recommendation to establish a purchasing agent. And you might wonder kind of why you would want to establish a purchasing agent. Currently, I do want to say at the outset, and this was really important for Sean to emphasize as well, that this is not an expansion of any authorization limits for anyone in the organization, including the CEO. All contracts in excess of $250,000 would still be coming to the board in the same manner that they are today. The JPA itself ties all of our procurement limits to San Mateo County and what San Mateo County is limited by. And the purchasing agent position is something that allows flexibility within our own designations to enter into contracts. So it would essentially reinforce the duties and responsibilities and limits that the CEO already has and the board has already approved. But in establishing a purchasing agent, we have a closer alignment to the government code in terms of what an individual purchasing agent or individual within the organization can do, and that's the CEO. Let's see here. The County of San Mateo, for reference, and I'm sure that this is applicable in many of your cities and towns, if not all, also has a purchasing agent. Marin Clean Energy also has a purchasing agent designated. So this is really trying to get ourselves in alignment with what is done across the board. And there's always, good power in numbers here in terms of our having processes that align with other CCAs. Again, this is really an administrative edit to our policy 14 to reflect current responsibilities and roles. And again, what I said at the top, it does not increase any authorized spending limits. If we wanted to do that in the future, it would give us more dexterity to do that. But again, that would be a complete, that's not the intention of this. And it's also not before the board to increase spending limits. So what you have here is a pullout of policy 14, which is our policy for all non-energy spending. And the bolded areas are the kind of new edits. I did it this way just because policy 14 is a multi-page policy. So this, for my mind, helps us understand exactly what's going on in a little bit of a more pinpointed way. So the bolded is the amended language, and the blue is what we already have. So again, the spending limits, the reference to the JPA is all staying the same. We have a couple of administrative edits that would go throughout. One further edit in the end of that excerpt that begins in the event of the CEO's absence. We just didn't have that language in the policy, but that was the practice. So we wanted to make that clear that the COO or the CFO aren't executing agreements without those requirements in place.
Just a quick question on this. So you said the bold is the new language. So it used to just say the chief executive officer?
Yes, yes.
That's what it said before?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes,
got it.
yes.
Thank
So
you.
the purchasing agent is new language, and the reference to the government code section there
Got
is
it.
new. So what I am asking, or what staff is asking, which I am a part of now, is a recommendation to the board that we go ahead and designate a purchasing agent pursuant to the California Government Code, identify the CEO as the purchasing agent in policy 14, and permit policy 14 amendments by council to reflect this change. And what I mean is there's a few housekeeping, crossings out and things that aren't shown in the last slide. And I'm happy to answer any questions or address any comments on this recommendation, but it really is a housekeeping policy edit that is part of my work here now that I'm in-house. Yes.
This may just seem minor, but the first time I read through this, I was thinking you're limiting signing in a calendar year to 250,000 period. I recommend putting in individual contracts.
Okay,
So it
into the
denotes
fiscal
that
year.
it's separate agreements rather than just a blanket for the whole year.
Absolutely. That would be a
And
little
maybe no one
terrifying.
else will do it that way, but the first read through, I read it that way.
Okay, fair enough. I will make that edit and make sure that's clear.
And just in a nutshell, this isn't changing anything, but the purpose of this is really to allow that delegation if Sean isn't available for something. Is that really the function that
The
we're
function,
achieving here?
that's part of the edit, but the function of the purchasing agent gives more freedom to be able to sign contracts. So CEO can sign contracts. And in the future, if we want to raise that delegation to 300,000 or 350,000, we can do so. We're not asking that today. But because the San Mateo County is limited to $200,000 currently, this is a necessary edit to our policy to make sure that we can continue to allow Sean to be at the level that she is today.
Okay.
So there's no cost.
No cost, no.
I move approval.
And Rick as amended?
Yeah.
Second.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
I'm sorry, public comment.
A little too fast.
Yes.
As amended with Colleen's edit, right?
Yeah.
Okay, and who was the second? I'm sorry. Julian, got it. Thank you.
Do you have any public comment?
That's what we should have checked off
Yes.
first.
Sorry. Okay, not having any, all in favor?
Aye.
Any against? Unanimous? Great. Item number 6, this is an action item to recommend approval of updated 2026 PCE rates to the board.
Sure, let me kick us off here and then I'll hand it over to Justin, who is going to take us through the presentation. We moved to a cost of service rate making approach, and pursuant to that, typically set rates at the same time the board approves the budget. So as you all remember, we went through this exercise in June where we set the budget and approved rates for the next fiscal year, or at least moving forward. At the time, we always knew that, or we anticipated that PG&E would be making some very significant changes to rates in January. And so we sort of at that time, if you went back and read the memo, we committed to coming back in January with a likely recommendation to adjust rates down, decrease rates at that time. So that's kind of where we are right now. So there's really nothing new from the plan that was laid out in January, which Justin will go through. We typically only change rates once a year, like that's our preferred course of action. But because this PG&E significant change, we wanted to come back and make sure that our customers are enjoying a discount. If we didn't come back, our customers would be paying a premium, which Justin will explain. So with that, I'll turn it over to Justin. Justin is our rates guru. He's been here now. Justin's been here for 2 years, a year and a half about. From MCE, but definitely be considered the expert in the industry on rate setting. And so really lucky to have Justin on staff and walk us through our recommendation.
Thank you for the great intro. Try to live up to that now. So just going through kind of what we're going to talk about here, get the elephant in the room out of the way, talk about PG&E's rate change for the year. We'll go over what's going on in our budget and what the rate proposal is. Talk about the impacts on the rate stabilization fund long term, as well as consider an alternative. And then a couple of minutia things that we do kind of need to cover in the rate change, and then finally the recommendation. So this is kind of the timeline of the big points over the last 6 months, how we got here. In June, your board set rates with a revenue requirement of $391 million. That resulted in customers saving about 10%. Relative to PG&E's generation costs, and that comes out to about $25 million saved through the first half of our fiscal year or the latter half of 2025. And December of last year, and unfortunately December 30th, PG&E released its rates for January 1st. This is a real challenge, I think, for our industry, where we get about a 24 to 48 hour notice before PG&E's new rates go into effect each year. And so it means that we kind of have to have a lot of things lined up and a lot of forecasting done. A lot of big changes happened. This is probably the most or one of the most consequential rate changes I've seen for CCAs over the last many years from PG&E. Their T&D rates went up, their generation rates went down, and the PCI rates more than tripled. That's all challenging for us because our customers will have to pay the higher T&D rates, they'll have to pay the higher PCI rates, but they won't enjoy any benefit from PG&E having lower generation rates. So the proposed change from us is to recommend reducing rates by 47% on February 1st. That actually keeps us aligned with our budget, with the updates that I'll be showing later on this deck. And that will also maintain a discount of about 10% for customers to enjoy from February through June. The alternative that can be considered, the 10% is really just the most consistent with the direction we had from the board on the initial rate setting. Alternatively, there's some reasons we might want to consider a smaller rate discount rate reduction that would get us closer to a 5% discount. And I did want to talk about PG&E's rate reduction a bit, because I don't know about you all, but I've certainly seen that bit of press from PG&E advertising how they reduced rates in January and how much that is benefiting customers and reflective of concerns they had about raising rates on customers. Unfortunately, their filings don't really match the narrative that's been put out there. What really happened is, yes, the bundled generation rates went down for their bundled customers, but all that went into the PCIA instead. And besides that, really their costs have gone up overall. So while it's being advertised as a rate decrease, PG&E is actually pulling in about 7% more revenue this year than last year. This kind of breaks down how it falls for a PG&E bundled customer versus a Peninsula Clean Energy customer. And I realize there's two tables here, so I'll try to go through them line by line. But when you look at the PG&E bundled rates, the non-CCA rates, you'll see their generation costs went from 15 cents down to 11.4 cents. So that's a decrease of 3.6 cents. And then on the T&D side of it, they went from 20.4 cents to 21.9 cents. That's an increase of 1.5. Netting those out for a bundled customer, they have a decrease of 2 cents. For Peninsula Clean Energy customers, on the other hand, I'll note that I left generation flat to not presume any rate changes that are discussed here yet. PCIA went from 1.1 cents to 3.6 cents. So that's an increase of 2.5. And then T&D went from 20.4 to 21.9, same as for PG&E's customers. So that's another 1.5 increase. So our customers' rates went up by 4 cents, while PG&E's bundled customers went down by 2 cents. That's a net 6-cent difference. And it means that while we were saving customers last year by about 1.5 cents per kilowatt hour, we're now looking at being about 4.6 cents above PG&E at this time. A lot of what's in this rate change is really a one-time correction. Where the PCIA sits, how much of responsibility for it falls onto CCA customers versus how much falls onto bundled customers depends on the valuation of PG&E's portfolio. And without getting into a lot of details on how that valuation is determined, essentially, they set that valuation at probably the highest possible point at the market, and then the market went down substantially. And so they really underestimated where the PCIA should have been set for CCA customers at the beginning of 2025. And the way that's resolved in how the PCIA works is all those uncollected costs get pushed into the next year. So we're dealing with a substantial one-time correction to the PCIA and PG&E's resulting generation rates, and then moving into a new normal, which is lower, but certainly not as low as what we're seeing this year. So I think it's about 50-50 how much of this is a one-time correction versus how much of this is new normal. You can see that we've dealt with rates. This is an 11-year chart here. You can see we've dealt with rates that are this low before. This is PG&E's bundled rate minus the PCIA. And I think this is an important chart because if a CCA is above that blue line, that means they're more expensive than PG&E. If they are below that blue line, they are less expensive than PG&E. And we've had to deal with really challenging years in 2020 and 2021, even more challenging than this year. And then we had very high energy market prices. We're not expecting to return to those same levels from the last 4 years, but we are expecting prices to rebound pretty significantly in 2027.
And I'll just try to go back. I underlined and bolded the very speculative. This forecast is very, very speculative. It's our best guess. Sounds like a bad word because there is a lot of analysis here, but energy markets are very volatile. We're using forward curve. We're estimating what PG&E rates are going to be. So we don't want to get too hung up on these numbers. They're our best estimate at this point, but a lot could change. And that's why it's helpful to have a strong liquidity and cash balance to manage volatility.
Yeah, we take
Does
a lot
that address the 2026 number as well as the other numbers, or is that what you're referring to as just 2027 and beyond?
26 is known. We know now what PG&E and the PCIA will be. Those are the numbers Justin just walked through on the prior page. So 26 is done. That's what I was referring to as the 27 through 30 numbers on this page, the dotted line.
Okay. Justin, I have a question.
Yes, please.
On the prior slide. So the T&D rates, are they, is that, what is that exactly?
So, and that's a great question. We also kind of use T&D for shorthand, but frankly, it's not just transmission and distribution. It is really everything that is not included in generation rates. There are things in there that even include, although they're very small line items, include things like nuclear decommissioning, include funding for energy efficiency programs. and so
But
forth.
that's charged by PG&E, right?
Yes.
Not by us. I don't understand why that impacts our rates.
It doesn't impact our rates, but I do want to give a complete picture of what customers are seeing on their bills. Customers are going to see a total cost for electricity that is approximately 38 cents per kilowatt hour. The lion's share of that will and has been for many years be what PG&E charges for transmission and distribution of their services. Our charges will be a fairly small percentage of the bill.
So, okay, so what's confusing to me is in the comparison of the PG&E generation and PG&E T&D rates. When I look at my bill, the transmission charge is 2/3 of the bill and the generation is 1/3 of the bill.
Yeah.
But those numbers aren't anywhere close to 2/3 versus 1/3. Right? I mean, 20 cents versus 15 cents is.
So I will say how much of your bill is transmission and distribution versus how much of it is energy charges. It really depends on your usage. There's something called a conservation incentive adjustment. It's also known as tiered rates, where above a certain amount of usage, you pay more, and below a certain amount, you get discounted. Overall, across the service area, that offsets each other. But what it does mean is if you have very high usage, you'll have a higher adjustment to that conservation incentive, and that will push your T&D rates to be a larger part of your bill. If you have very low usage, then it will tend to be that you get a discount from that. And so your T&D shrinks as part of your bill and your energy becomes a larger part. In addition to that, low-income customers who get a care discount, that care discount is applied entirely on those non-generation charges. So for low-income customers, they may see the energy component being the largest part of their bill rather than.
And this is just rates are very complicated with many different rate classes, usage. This is a simple, typical, we're trying to simplify it here.
This is a system average. So this is across all customers in the entire service area, large CNI, streetlights, agriculture, households.
Question?
Sorry, yeah. Other question?
So the lovely bill insert. And PG&E asking for CPUC rate increases associated with 2019 Kincaid fire, 2021 Dixie fire. How soon would that go into effect? If this goes through the CPUC, I don't know when they calendar these. I'm just curious, having seen this and what you're presenting, when would we see the effects of this if it was?
I don't know about that individual one. I'd have to go look at the exact one. The challenge with a lot of those notifications is they happen pretty constantly because they're different numbers they're talking about increasing, and they tend to notify people independently based on the different decisions. So you can get 4 different notices that refer to 4 different rate changes, but they don't reference what's happening in the other ones. So combined, they could be raising your rates a lot, they could be offsetting, they could be going downward. And so I find that none of those notices really tell the complete picture, unfortunately. But that's a point of frustration we've had. It's one of those things that it's technically compliant for regulatory and for being open about rates, but it ends up leaving customers with information they can't really do a whole lot with.
So if they were costs associated with wildfire, would you think that's T&D?
That's going to fall under transmission and distribution, yes.
So we could make assumptions that increase in T&D from PG&E might include some of these increases from the past, but we never have a way to connect it.
Yes, and I mean that's what's reflected here too. Is you had that orange bar there. It is the increase to T&D charges. It also the big one too is all the undergrounding that's going on. A lot of people really pushed for that. There's a lot of good reasons to do undergrounding, but it's also incredibly expensive. That's pushed up PG&E's rates a lot over the last couple of years.
And so under T&D, where we have storms and a lot of storm damage, San Francisco out power for days, and maybe there's a huge cost associated. again, to catch up on this, do we ever have any idea where that ends up in T and D? Is it a year? Any kind of,
It depends. If it is a shorter term expense, then it should be in their true up of costs for what, sort of like we just ran into at the end of the year. If it is a broader application, if they are asking for $500 million for undergrounding of power lines, for example, they would have to file it as a separate application, and that could potentially take years to resolve. So it just kind of depends. Some of them are quicker, some of them are not.
I appreciate your response, because I understand a lot of it is subjective and you may not have a definitive answer, but gives us an idea.
It's a great question. I mean, I think this is why a lot of us get very frustrated with PG&E is these processes are not necessarily very consistent. And so it can be hard to get down to the bottom line information you want to see out of them, right?
Another question? over
Yes.
here.
Andrews, did you have a question?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
On the PCIA, obviously it's a huge increase coming up. What sort of compliance hurdle do they need to go through? And is there any transparency as to how they calculate and justifications of them?
There,
It seems to me that it's, oh, they're going up. Oh, too bad,
yeah, there's what they have is their energy resource recovery account. We do have a filing about that every year. Cal CCA, represents the industry a lot in contesting that. Sometimes other CCAs do too, and we do find things to pull out or point out that are errors and so forth. So there is some transparency into it, but a lot of what the PCI had anything to do with is what are PG&E's contracted costs, and those we don't have visibility into. That's considered private information. And we can have consultants sometimes who are approved where they can see it, but they can't share it with us. They can only kind of share the top lines. So there is certainly the PCI is looked at every year, and certainly it's up for discussion at the CPUC on the results of those calculations every year. But there's always room to, there's always a lot of disagreement about it. And, I don't think we get as much transparency with it as we would like.
So what I'm hearing is they have a contract, they bought it at the peak, right? And they need to recuperate some of those losses. And all of us, the state of Northern California, just trust PG&E for their calculation for the most part.
Some of that is PG&E's. A lot of it's also calculations that are being done by the Public Utilities Commission. And some of those are done, those can be done by different methodologies. There was a decision that happened last year that changed the way they were valuing resource adequacy. That impacted these numbers and did drive the PCI up a bit. We didn't agree with how they ended up deciding how to value resource adequacy. And so that is, I think, where a lot of this gets fought over a little bit is how to exactly set those rules. And our regulatory team does a lot of work as combined with other statewide entities that we work with to work on those issues.
Thanks, Justin.
Go ahead, you had a question.
So my question is, how does the base services charge figure into all this? Because we got an insert that says, or a letter saying that you will be paying less for your electricity use, and that this is supposed to benefit low-income users. And yet the chart that they show, which kudos to Gwen, their chart makes it look like low-energy users are paying more and high-energy users are paying less. And it's crazy. So thank you for all your clear marketing that you do for us.
I thought I was going to get out of here without having to talk about base services charge, but no, I'll try to keep it fairly brief. The fixed charge, what that is California has a history of collecting all costs for electricity volumetrically, a price per kilowatt hour. That has been very good for promoting a lot of things California wants to promote. Energy efficiency has higher value, solar has higher value. The reality of it is that all costs are not volumetric. There are some that are fixed. Our customer care team, it doesn't matter how much electricity our customers use, we're still going to need to have the same costs associated with that. And so what the base services charge is trying to do is similar to a lot of other utilities both in the state and nationally, to move some of those costs to being fixed and some of them being volumetric, and overall collecting the same amount of money. When you do that, of course, low usage customers are going to end up paying more because their volumes were low. And then the higher usage customers will pay less because they're getting lower volumetric charges. Realizing that this was a problem with low income customers, they created a caveat that basically said if you were low income, it's supposed to be income based, but they ended up just kind of going with the care discount as a way to indicate your low income for the moment. Then you get a lower fixed charge. And so that's kind of what they're trying to say in saying that lower income customers won't get hit as hard. But yes, if their usage is below a certain level, they may still end up paying a little bit more.
And so how does that figure into?
That is within that T&D amount. You know, for example, I say 21.9 cents. In many cases, that may be 18 cents with a fixed charge, right?
That's a really good question. I mean, that's an important issue that all of us have seen in our bills and probably none of us understand. Because it doesn't, you know, you have to trust the CPUC to believe that this is valid and well designed, which I have literally somewhere maybe slightly above zero confidence in the CPUC. So my question is, does the CPUC look at every contract that is included into the PCIA? And it's shocking that the PCIA is going from about 3% of your bill of your of your total electricity rate to about 10%. That's amazing.
Yeah, and that's really because the value of PG&E's portfolio has changed, and it's not that their contracts have changed, it's that the market prices for things like resource adequacy, which we talked about here last year, how those have gone down very sharply. We were looking at $40 a kilowatt for resource adequacy, now we're looking at 12. That is a huge difference in PG&E's rates. And so I think, you know, another way of looking at this would be to say, going forward, the PCI will probably be around 2 cents. And last year, the PCI probably should have been about 2 cents, but it was only at 1 cent because PG&E's portfolio was overvalued. And then that's getting pushed into this year. That's why it's so high this year, but we do expect that to fall sharply next year, short of, you know, any other market changes.
And do they look at every contract?
I believe so. I don't have visibility into their model, but I believe that's considered, yeah. And it depends on when your community left PG&E service, which contracts you're responsible for.
Get that.
Yeah, the PCIA, how do I get more educated about it? Because it's such a mystery box and I'm, you know, new on the executive committee and I just feel like I need to understand this better. You know, and how cynical should I be? I mean, is this just PG&E lobbyists are running circles around the CCAs? Is that what's going on, or is it more fundamental than that?
You know, it's I probably shouldn't get into it too much here. I'm happy to have a discussion later to go over any questions about PCIA and also get our regulatory team in. But I'll say that, you know, the concept of the PCIA, I think, is a fair one, which is that if customers leave PG&E service and you're down to a few customers, or let's say there's only one customer left with PG&E, you don't want them to be left holding the bag on contracts that were signed for the 30-year term.
And I understand that. And is 30 years, is that an average term of these kind of contracts? Do we have any visibility on the horizons on this thing?
That would be a long one. Where I think a lot of stuff gets challenging was that when renewable portfolio standards were going into effect And PG&E was signing a lot of the contracts it has in place. They were pressured heavily to sign very long-term contracts, in some cases for very expensive resources. Buying large utility scale solar in 2010, 2012 was certainly good for the environment, but the prices that you saw for those projects is substantially higher than what you would see today, for example. And so those are all kind of in there, and that's what drives up the PCIA.
Where is that capacity going then?
Well, PG&E has those resources. They can offload some of those resources. They can sell them, and that does get accounted for in the calculations as well. They also, if they're left long on energy, then that simply gets sold into CAISO at the market rate, which is the same as how we would deal with it. And they separately will handle things like RPS resources, renewable portfolio standard eligible resources, and resource adequacy associated with resources too sometimes.
Okay. So I understand they've taken the position all their long-term contracts are confidential, but is there any known visibility on the average horizon is this gonna wind down in 10 years, 20 years, 30 years? It has to wind down, right?
There are some things that will definitely wind down out of the PCIA. For example, if you have a contract that was a 20-year contract, that was going to, if it was active when we started service, but it's expiring in 2025 or 2030, some of those will be falling off out of there. Some of those may be good or bad contracts. But there are certain other resources, such as utility-owned generation, resources that they own, where the commission has essentially said that they get PCI recovery of that in perpetuity as long as those resources are operational. So some of them will not fall off of there. And, we do our best to model it out as far as we can. But the biggest factor is actually not so much those contracts and the resources. The biggest factor tends to be what the current valuation of the energy from those contracts is. And because that does fluctuate a lot.
Whether they're good contracts or bad contracts.
Yeah.
Because if they're good contracts, they can be selling that on the market and recouping that exposure.
Exactly. If the market price is very high, then even if the contract was a bad contract 2 years ago, it may still be net positive, in which case, we could even see a negative PCIA.
Okay. Yeah, just any resources or if anyone, someone has to be analyzing this. If there's a report, someone can send me, I'd appreciate seeing it,
So if I can just step in for a second. PCIA has been very complicated from the very get-go, and as we're seeing it go up and down, that's reflective of the change and the new normal that you were referring to earlier. Let's let staff get back to, it's always good to have a refresher on it and on the PCIA and how it works and the projections. And at the executive committee, as we're having issues and just curiosity and learning more, the rest of our board probably have even more questions. It's complex. So let's let staff figure out how we can let more people know, and maybe there's a
We have
memo.
like a PCIA presentation, which we could probably dust off,
Yeah.
like a primer that we could do. I know
That was very-
there's
that was
quorum
very
issues.
good.
We can't do it. Well, I guess we could do it at a big meeting, but we could do sort of for call in for people who are interested in learning
Right,
more,
right.
new board members.
Well, I think we can have a planned educational
At a
and,
meeting, yeah,
and,
if there's
and
time.
there could be a majority. It just has to be managed
Sure.
with all the Brown Act provisions.
A memo with the presentation to allow the questions to come out. We have a few more questions, so I think Director Ragsdale, you were next, and then Director Mackin, you can follow.
I had two things. One is quick. You had mentioned that care customers get a discount and only a portion of the bill. Which portion was that?
So it's a little confusing. CARE is calculated based on what their total bill would be if they were a PG&E customer. So it's calculated on all the charges, but it's only applied against non-generation or the transmission and distribution
Okay.
charges.
So we, in a way, we are giving a discount to them. It's just not, if they're PCE customers, they are still getting a discount from us.
Yes, and we, yeah,
So getting the full
right,
discount that they
exactly.
would get if they were a bundled PG&E customer.
Yeah, I think the easiest way to say it is if they would qualify, if they would get a $20 discount with care with PG&E and they're on our service, they will get a $20 discount. Like it is exactly the same discount regardless of the service provider
Okay.
in dollar amounts.
That's good. That's good to know.
And so with us being less expensive, they actually are, still getting the full discount even though they're
And then-
paying slightly less.
The savings that they get with us
Mhm.
on top. Okay, excellent. The second question I have is for going forward, because I know you're not done. But you had mentioned, the staff recommendation is the 10%, and that was consistent with the last board direction. And I just wanted, as you go forward and, finalize your recommendation, if you didn't have that thought in your head that the board said 10%, would your recommendation change to be, just do 5% now?
That's a very good question, and I will absolutely have that in here going forward. So
Okay, thank you.
we have a whole slide or two on that.
Okay, a PCIA burning question. It's not complicated. We tend to look at this in retrospect. Oh, what they signed as contracts and when are they going to expire? They're still signing new contracts, and so are we. If we lose a customer, are we able to charge PCIA?
That is another very good question. I haven't heard this discussed for a very long time, but last I heard, the commission did sort of affirm that we do have the right to assess some sort of departing load charge if we want to. But I think CCAs has seen it as too much of a looming thing for customers to put that out there. And so I don't think any CCAs have set a departing load charge besides maybe like a one-time fee for leaving.
There's not really a functional way to collect it.
That's the other thing too. I mean, it's kind of weird when the
You lose
CPUC
it.
says you can collect it, but you would have no access to the
Right.
bill or connection with
Right.
that customer. So
Thank
It also hasn't been a huge issue because there haven't been large departures other than, I think, in San Bernardino, right, where they went bankrupt.
But you can imagine it's a goal of PG&E to play with these numbers until
Yeah.
we're more expensive.
Right.
They
And
do.
then
That's-
we will lose customers, and then it's a very salient issue.
I mean, a big piece of this is the PUC required PG&E to provide generation from renewable resources when they were very expensive. And they went into a bunch of deals that turned out not very good, particularly thermal deals that they went into in the Mojave. And they went bankrupt twice. And those contracts could have been canceled. But the PUC chose not to cancel those.
and there's a lot of room for discussion, I'll just say, and
Because
I'll try to move forward, but there's a lot of room for discussion on sometimes PG&E is allowed to extend a contract. Well, they don't seem to need those resources anymore. Why are they allowed to extend it and still assign responsibility to us? So there's a lot of things we're still trying to fight through. And there's an ongoing proceeding at CPUC about the PCIA that the second track is happening in a few months. So. All right. So moving forward to some, I think, happier news. Looking at our budget, the board approved budget, we were very cautious in what our forecasting was for what PG&E's rates would look like. We did a lot of additional sort of custom modeling that other folks weren't doing to really get the most current market conditions in there and what we expected to have to deal with in 2026. We then also revised the budget, used 5 months of actuals for our revenues. The biggest change from budget was that sales were shorter than expected. That's just something that the whole industry is seeing. PG&E saw it too, where weather's been good. And so we haven't had those heat waves. We haven't had those huge draws on electricity. We had some other favorable things too, lower customer program spending than expected due to program delays and higher interest income. So after we do all that, even with putting this rate reduction in there, PCE is right on budget. You can see here the lower sales revenues, higher operating revenues, and on the other side of it, on the cost side, we have lower cost of energy and lower operating expenses because of the program spending. And we're actually $500,000 favorable to budget with cutting rates 47% as described earlier. And that's a very good position for us to be in, given all the instability and everything around rates. And, I'm sure you've seen others, a lot of folks who are updating their budgets, updating their rates, and are really sort of scrambling right now. And we are in a very good position relatively.
I'll digress a little bit here, maybe pat ourselves a little bit on the back, so I apologize in advance. But when we set the budget back in June or May, when we were going through it, and we had Justin on staff who was at the time advising us that PG&E is going to reduce their rates significantly, the PCIA is going to triple. I remember thinking, there's no way that can happen. The changes, you see the cliff in that graph, but through his analysis and forecasting, we threw it in the model, or we included in the model. We projected this was going to happen, and unfortunately it did. But I think the good news is we were prepared, and I'm curious if I can't speak for other CCAs, but I don't know if other CCAs were anticipating the same dramatic rate change that PG&E did a couple weeks ago.
There's certainly other CCAs that are having some, budget deviations right now coming out of this, but we do not have one presently. So scenarios, we're the only CCA that's considering having rates that would result in a 10% savings to customers. I think even if we were at the 5% level, we would be the only CCA that was hitting that level or would be close to it. Most are going to be within about 1% of PG&E's energy costs, and several will probably be more expensive than PG&E this year. So we're in a good spot. This kind of line by line goes through the different impacts of these scenarios. The first column, you'll see there that 0% savings. That's what it would mean to be at exact parity with PG&E, where we were not saving customers any money. At a 5% savings, you can see there too, the rates go down, the customer savings goes up. And then finally, the staff proposal here is that 10% savings, which is a 6.6 cent per kilowatt hour level. Going across instead for average rate, you'll see that with every 1% additional savings, you see a reduction to rates of about 1 cent per kilowatt hour. And you also see an increase to customer savings of a little over $1 million. I did want to point out one number that might be a little bit surprising here, which is that 0% savings actually results in customers paying more over the calendar year. And the reason for that is because January alone, with the rate situation we have right now, there is going to be that premium in January. Under all the other scenarios, that's offset through the rest of the year. And then you can see the impacts too on our sales revenue and our change in net position. At a 5% savings level, our change in net position would be 11.5 million instead of 4.5. And that kind of brings us to where we're especially looking for your feedback, which is on the rate stabilization fund and potentially setting rates a little bit differently, to your question earlier. The staff recommendation of 10% here and 6.6 cents per kilowatt hour, that is based on the approved budget. It gets our change in net position right on budget. It gets our customer savings target right on expectations. But we are really concerned that with lower rates in the second half of 2026 and some recovery in 2027, but not full recovery of rates in 2027, we're going to need to dip pretty heavily into the rate stabilization fund for next fiscal year. And we currently have $128 million in there, which is fantastic. I'm really glad that we put extra money in there, and that's something we've been saying we're going to need it. We're going to need it. And we now finally are really going to need it next fiscal year. Going through that rate stabilization fund at these proposed rates of 6.6 cents per kilowatt hour, this 10% discount, we would go through $104 million of that 128 next fiscal year. And so given that that's pretty high, and we would fully exhaust the rate stabilization fund most likely by fiscal year 28, we are suggesting that, or at least looking for your feedback on, should we maybe set rates a little bit higher to 7.2 cents. Because that would still be a 5% discount to customers. It would still be really leading the industry in terms of the savings that we're giving customers. Because we think we were certainly planning on recommending raising rates to that 7.2 cent level in July anyway. So if we did it now and brought that proposal to the board instead of this 10% figure, we would conserve a little bit of money. We would extend the life of a rate stabilization fund a little bit. And perhaps most importantly, we would be avoiding having a rate increase in July. We would just have one rate change for the year, and it would be downward instead of a downward decrease and then an upward increase.
No comment on
On
that?
this note, this is where we want to have most of the conversation.
I read that staff report, I went, great idea. Until I thought about the phone calls I got over the holidays from residents who were absolutely gobsmacked at the PG&E bills they got. Where they were going, I've never had a bill over $500 in 1 month. And they don't know what to do with that. And they're complaining. And I said, well, is it on your gas? Was it your furnace? We've had a really, really cold couple of months. And it may continue into February. So while PG&E is doing all these commercials all over the radio, everywhere, oh, we're lowering rates. If we look higher, and I did talk to a couple residents who contacted me, and they spoke, they're PCE customers. Again, they didn't know they were PCE customers. They talked to PG&E, who gave them glowing things about what they could do for them. We'll make you a care customer. Oh, we're gonna be lowering rates. And I said, did they switch you to PG&E? Well, I don't know.
Well, so PG&E can't accept opt-outs directly from customers. We have to
good.
select them. So I want to put that one aside.
Good.
We were just talking about this earlier. I don't want to deal with gas rates. I don't want to know about gas rates. I found that I need to know about gas rates because we've had a lot of discussions about it, and that's what's driving up bills. The cost of gas, some people are saying, oh, well, nationally it says that it didn't go up, that's the commodity cost of gas is not the problem. The problem is that PG&E's essentially their transmission and distribution for gas has gone up astronomically over the last 3 years. And so every year, especially when you get the winter and you start having all this additional gas usage, your bills go way up. And it's gotten worse year after year. And you talked about messaging too. I mean, this is a part of the problem is you can't really tell people their rates are going down and then their bills are higher. You just lose credibility then.
Well, and interesting. So several people that contacted me then said, well, because, I said, was it gas or electric on your bill? Well, I think it's both. So they stopped using gas furnace and are plugging in space heaters, which will probably be costing them an arm and a leg.
Probably true. They're gonna go to a higher tier and everything.
Exactly. And they haven't even seen the bill yet from that. So it's really gonna be sobering.
Yeah, that is unfortunately something that people tend to do. I've seen it for a long time. They think it's going to be more efficient just to heat one room with the electric,
Exactly.
but the electric consumption on those are so high, it is rarely going to save them money.
That's what I tried to say, and they went, no, we're just sitting in one room, the whole house is freezing, you can see your breath, but we're sitting in one room.
Leslie and I are laughing because we've had many conversations
I've
like
had this
this.
conversation for 25 years,
Yes.
like about the electric space heater. It's like, oh, it's so tiny, it's just this, and
Yeah.
it's 50 cents an hour to run it.
So first, I just want to acknowledge, I think finance did a remarkable job in estimating this, and we know this is impossible to do well. I mean, we've had real serious problems with the differences between the reality and the estimates in the past. And this time it works in our favor of a $4.5 million surplus over what we expected at this point, knowing that these rate changes are coming, I think is remarkable. So I really want to
Thank you.
acknowledge how well that was done. And I also want to acknowledge that while there is the projection that we go from 10% to 5% in July, we don't know exactly what's going to happen because these things are very hard to estimate accurately. I'm also very aware that we're changing the name and going to be involved in a huge program with our 10th anniversary and the new company that we're going to be pushing out there. And to do that while we have a 10% discount, I think is a really good thing. Good thing for us, but I don't think we necessarily need good things. Our customers need to know that lower electricity means they can convert from gas to electricity on those appliances that are convertible. And with the high gas rates, they're going to be motivated, or some people are going to be motivated to do that, to get away from those high rates. And I want to encourage that. So I'm more favorable to go with the 10% now, even though there is the prospect of having to raise rates in July, which I don't like. But, you know, but I think the story of being 10% is a really big story. And even if there aren't other CCAs that are 5%, the difference between 5 and 10% is enormous. So that's how I feel.
So we have a couple more slides, if anybody can hold the questions, so we can get through it, and then we can have that discussion, because there's still a couple more.
The next
things to go through.
slides are pretty
Yeah.
administrative.
Yeah, I'll wrap it up.
Quickly,
but
come
yeah.
back to this conversation.
These following slides are much less interesting. So there are two sort of loose ends we had around rates that we want to do something more about. One was that we have about 16,000 accounts that are on the 2021 or 2022 vintages for PCIA. Essentially, those are the years that they were enrolled in PCE service. There was an enormous increase to the PCI for those vintages. They had a heavily discounted one. It was actually -2 cents last year. And now it is jumping all the way up to over 5 cents per kilowatt hour this year. So that is a 7-cent swing. We are kind of concerned about the shock that's going to be to customers on their bills to have that sort of increase. There's a lot of reasons for that increase, but it gets into some very small details like changing how battery storage is valued that was contracted for those customers and so forth. So what we have proposed is a 1.6 cent rate stabilization credit to be applied to these customer bills for a 1-year period. And what that credit would do is it would bridge the gap between the 2016 PCI vintage and the 21-22 PCI vintage, so that their expected bills and cost savings, that sort of 10% savings, would be consistent with all the other customers in our service area. And the cost for that, I believe, is about $700,000 for this fiscal year.
So our customers have different PCIA rates based on when they join?
Correct. And that's true to all CCAs. There are actually 16, 17 different PCI vintages at this point. 16,
So
sorry,
anyone-
no
Or like
pre
every year,
anymore.
there's
Is
one.
anyone like comparing their bill to a neighbor and the numbers might be different? Or is it they don't have this visibility on the bill?
It depends. For the most, well, they do have their PCI vintage is listed on the bills. But it's community based for the most part. San Mateo County, if you move into San Mateo County, you will be assigned the 2016 vintage. Los Banos, since it was a later enrollment, they're going to be assigned to 2021 vintage. And that's for the most part what we're talking about here, but there's also customers, if a customer opts out and then they re-enroll, they would be assigned a new vintage based on the year they re-enroll.
Wow, I had no idea.
So of those 15,000, I thought Los Banos was like 30,000 accounts.
No,
No.
Might be
So of
popular.
those 15,000 accounts, the large majority is Los Banos.
yeah, it's mostly Los Banos. There is this, as an aside, there are some misvintaged San Mateo County accounts that we're working with PG&E to get them, vintage correctly, but there are a handful of 2021, 22 vintage accounts in San Mateo County that shouldn't be that vintage. They should be 2016. But that's actually just a problem across PG&E's territory. There has to do with new construction. Sometimes the account gets coded wrong. And that's what's going on. Yeah.
Other things that we've also proposed in here is setting a minimum rate of 0. The reason this is relevant is that for a very small number of accounts, and we're talking around 20 accounts or so, you have customers that have what's called a super off-peak period, is a heavily discounted period in the springtime months during the highest solar generating hours, which is a good thing and makes a lot of sense. But because of various factors on how these customers are billed, the PCIA is actually higher than the PG generation rate is for that specific time of use period. So to be lower than PG&E, we would essentially have to have a negative rate, which we don't think sets a good precedent. We proposed a minimum rate of 0 for these customers, and that they would still continue to see savings within other time of use periods and should still do better overall. But we don't want to be in the habit of paying people to take electricity from us.
Do you want to go back to the alternative scenarios? Probably the best place to continue the conversation. I think the last page is just the recommendations.
Yeah, great.
So just to follow up on Rick's comments, I don't know if other people want to.
So I thought you were taking it in a different direction when you made that comment. I'm actually very concerned about having a new name, having
And then
this new
increasing.
branding, and all of a sudden increasing the rates. So going from a 10% to a 5%. So I think I would argue that there's 2 reasons to stay with 5%. One is just for rate stabilization, so it looks like we really have thought out through our rates and that we're not moving them around too much, or even. And also because we don't want to roll out Westlight Energy and all of a sudden have the rates go up. Even if it was something that was planned and we knew ahead of time.
That's very much in line with what our thinking was going into this too, and our concerns was it even if it would result in lower costs over the year, it's going to still be a rate increase, and it's still going to be thought of as a rate increase.
And it'll be associated with the new name.
That's our concern.
Very likely could be.
Could be.
Yeah, I agree with that. The analysis is so interesting with the new name, but we're going to be rolling it out slowly. It's not going to be out, by this week, right? So if at our next board meeting, we do make this decision to go to 5%, probably for the entire year, that goes more cleanly with the new name rollout. So I do think that's good, and it's still 5%. Which is still a savings. And we have other challenges, like people don't even know they're with PCE. So I think that's the difference between 5 and 10% to me is not our challenge with who we are, because it's still less. We're still less than PG&E, and people are still doing the right thing for the environment. So I think we've got a lot of positive. So like when I read the staff report, and I said, really? The 10%, interesting. But then when you made the comment, more consistent with the prior board direction, I said, yes, it's probably the recommendation would be 5%, which is what makes sense to me now to rip the Band-Aid off.
Yeah, I guess I'm a bit confused. I appreciate the discussion, but staff proposal, is that staff's recommendation, 10%? I mean, what?
Staff's recommendation is the 10% figure, which is rates of 6.6 cents per kilowatt hour. It's that 47% rate reduction. It's the net change in net position of $4.5 million, which is $500,000 favorable to the budget. It is most consistent with our approved budget. So that's why it is in there as staff's recommendation. And we did want to make a recommendation. But really what we are looking for the most from this committee is your feedback on whether that's what you want to stick with because that's the approved budget, or whether you would want us to consider that 5% figure, which we would also we'd be happy to take to the board, and we think would help us long-term
Yeah,
as well.
we debated, we had a lot of debates before what to lead with. And I think Sean, who has her hands up, probably wants to speak. I think she especially wanted to have the discussion, empower the EC to opine on the direction versus it sort of being a check the box, a foregone conclusion. So it's really, while we had to come up with a recommendation, there was a lot of debate and we'd be open to either alternative. I can tell you my preference.
I mean, I'm always very interested in staff's firm recommendation. It sounds like the 10% proposal is made because it's consistent with the budget that was approved, but it sounds like you're recommending the 5%.
We are a little, one of the challenges with the 5% we thought, and I want to turn over to Sean, who has her hand up, is probably going to be more articulate than I can. Is we were concerned about the dynamic of our cash position at 5%, we would come in above budget. We're not, it looks like we are potentially not offering as much a discount as we potentially could. To me, it's not as much a financial decision. It's more of the perception, a rate increase later on with the Nate change, the benefits of a stable rate throughout the calendar year versus the 5 versus 10. But Sean has her hand up, so I'm probably speaking.
No, I think you're right on target. And this is precisely the discussion that we wanted to have with you, because honestly, I think you can make an argument either way, which is, what we're talking about right now. I do think that the one thing that we're sensitive to, because we've had some board discussion about rates and also our very healthy rate stabilization fund in the past, is that it's important that we not unnecessarily stockpile, my term, cash. And we have now approaching, I think, Nick, somewhere around 375 days cash on hand. What we had talked about was anticipating this cliff that has been referenced and having to significantly lower our rates, that we would begin to use part of the balance that we have, and in a way that was prudent. And so it is true that our feeling about this, and also there's some good public relations. I mean, Rick, I did hear what you were saying as I was driving back from the doctor, that, it's a story to tell, because we have been prepared. So we are fine with whatever you choose. We've had an ongoing discussion about it. I've been very clear with the team that I believe the board concurs. We do not want to be at a premium to PG&E over the course of this year. And I believe, Justin, please help me here, 5% was going to put us darn close to that, or maybe at an annual premium because of this 1 month delay. So we were willing to kind of make that trade-off to keep the 10%, but then have to bump up in June to the 5% savings, realizing that in essence, it's not a huge differential to the customer. Between 5 and 10, they don't see a tremendous amount of difference. So that's why we landed at 10% for all of those reasons, not really ever wanting to be close to a premium or frankly, even at parity. So, Justin, are we going to be at a premium if it were at 5%?
No, that's what I pulled up here. So you
Thank
can
you.
see under a 5% scenario, the savings over the entire fiscal year is 18 million. Although over the calendar year, because we have to deal with January and without the benefit of last year, we would only be saving customers about 3.3 million. So that's pretty slim.
It's slim. And just one more thing to say, and again, we're good with whatever direction executive committee wants to recommend to the board. We do have a bogey in 2030 of a minimum of 100 million saved for customers by 2030. And what we are hearing is that things are going to continue to be tight, right, in fiscal year 27 and 28. So the other discussion we had internally was, does it make sense to chip away a little more substantially while we can at the 10% to get to net out at approximately it's 20, is it 25 million then, Justin, for fiscal year?
Yeah, so it'd be 25 million for fiscal year 26 if we stayed at the 10% target for the whole year.
Exactly.
The rest of the year.
It's sort of a short-term, long-term discussion that we've been having internally. Hopefully that helps.
All right, so we have a couple of questions, Director Nash, and then Director Ragsdale, and Director Doonan.
So just to Quick question. I do believe strongly that we should have a stable rate, that we should not be bumping it up, especially when we are doing the branding. Have you thought of anything? It sounds like you have between 5% and 10%. Some
That was my
middle
question.
ground. Yeah.
I mean, we can really, we've certainly looked at the numbers. We can go anywhere between here. It's really a gradient.
Exactly.
So
I mean, what if we were to do 10 million?
Maybe
obviously.
to clarify, like the differential between 5 and 10% is less than half a cent. So it's that's really what we're actually talking about here, because of how
Yeah.
drastically we have to take we have to take it down to get to the PG&E drop. When we're talking about a discount between 5 and 10%, it's less than half a cent. So there's not actually a lot of room between the 5 and 10% to play around in the middle.
One of the things that really does concern me though is just the rate stabilization fund, how much money we have left there, because if this continues, we don't want to be left without an alternative 2 years down the road.
Yeah.
So that's why, maybe even though it might not make as much, well, anyway, argument.
We have,
My question was Betsy's.
all right, then it's, Director Dugan, then Director Golia, and then Director McIntyre.
All right. Well done, Chair. Nick, you said this wasn't really a financial decision, but did I hear that right? That we're drawing the rate stabilization down from 128 million to like 0 in 14 months or so?
Yeah, well, the decision we're talking about is setting rates for the next 5 months. And the thought was if we do 10%, we would come back and recommend, potentially not, but there won't be another change in PG&E rate. So I'm highly expecting reducing the discount from 10 to 5. So it's really only the next 5 months. And the financial impact of those 5 months, the difference is $7 million. And so I don't want to sneeze on $7 million, but that's not the driver of the decision, I think. I think the decision is more of the PR, the potential rate increase, the rate stable, the pros and cons of both.
What did I see then that had us drawing down that 128 million then?
Yeah,
Well, that goes into the next 2 years.
that's the next, most of the,
If we don't increase
if
in
we-
July.
if we maintain the discount at 10% for the next fiscal year, we will draw it down 104 million in 1 year. And over 2 years, we'll have exceeded it. So that would not be my recommendation. So I'm going to strongly come in July or June and revert to the 5%. And so when we had this discussion, to be
All right.
candid, I sort of said, I'm fine with the 10% financially, as long as the board knows that I'm going to come back in May and make a strong case for a rate increase.
Got it.
I don't want them saying, whoa,
Yeah.
I didn't know rates were
All right.
going up. If I had known that, I would have set it at 5. So that's why we've been.
No, thank you. That helps me take my finance hat off and put my marketing hat on. And I'll say, I think we're thinking about it backwards.
Okay.
Because we haven't even launched, we probably should have had Gwen go first to really understand what this rollout might look like. But, we're not rolled out yet. So to go in January with this 10%, there's no there. I mean, we might actually have, a sliver of customer awareness come July, just in time for Nick to tell us we got to raise rates. So that's all backwards. So I think where I'm at is let's keep the 5%. We've always been 5%. We also, I don't think people think of us as 5%, 10%. They think of us as clean and cheaper. And that's really the important perception. And then what we might want to think about is once we feel like the name's launched and out there and we're still in our 10 years, and maybe we do hey, to celebrate our 10 years, we're going to go from 5 to 10% discount for 6 months and just celebrate and make great hay on that. And then everyone knows it's just for this limited time, but hooray, this is great. And then when it drops back to 5, no one's disappointed because it was known it was only going to be for 6 months or something like that. And that would then be a marketing initiative and a lot more fun, I think.
Noted, Golia.
So 2 things. First, the rate stabilization fund we have to protect our customers. We're not a bank. We shouldn't be putting more and more and more money aside. We should be using that money for our customers. The difference between 5 and 10% is like 3 some million and 21 million over the year. So I understand that if the projections are all accurate, we would need to change our rates by what's effectively 0.6 in July. I don't think that's big news, but I'm not a marketing person. And I don't think this board is a marketing entity. I think we need to protect our customers. I'm 100% opposed to staying at 5%, and I'm going to advocate that before the board.
Director Mackin.
I concur with you completely, and I'll tell you why. Those winter bills are gonna be
Yeah.
high. People aren't gonna pick apart whether it was 5 or 10. They're gonna see that bill is high, and our duty is to protect the customers. That's what it comes down to. They're not gonna ask, was your discount 5 or 10%? They're gonna look at the bill. And granted, some of it's gonna be gas. We get into July, we raise it. We don't say, oh, sorry, we had to raise it a lot. We say, we have a 5% discount from PG&E. We make it a positive. We don't have to be we're dwelling on the angst of raising it, but I think that's easy. We're 5% less and we tout that. But I think the winter bill sticker shock, where we've got food going up, we have everything increasing. People, water costs in our cities, astronomical. People are literally calling City Hall and asking for help. It's that serious.
So we have Director Fung and then Director Nash, and then we probably need to keep on moving this forward, so.
Can I make one comment as a point of order here? What we are seeking here is definitely a clear direction on presenting one or the other to the board. We definitely don't want to go to the full board with two different options, because there is an implementation time for us to get this set up, so we need to start setting things up. If the full board has a different direction, like it may cause a small implementation delay where we can't set rates until a little bit later in February.
Thank you.
Leslie has to deal with that. So.
Just between 5 to 10% to our customers, what are they seeing dollar wise monthly?
So that's about 0.6 cents. So,
Average bill, what size are we talking about in a monthly? budget?
So our average customer bill is 385 kilowatt hours for a household. So that's about $2.30
Per bill.
per month. Yeah.
Per bill per month, per client.
Yes, per household.
Per
Yeah, I mean, obviously,
One
a
bill, one
big
household,
business is
yeah.
going to have a lot more.
$2,
About $2.30. Yeah, 2.5.
$3 on average.
Not a lot.
So, sorry,
Go ahead.
I'm trying to make a point. So I get the passion on the both sides on that discussion. I really do. And winter bill, how expensive things are, everything we can. The whole point of this rate stabilization fund is to stabilize the rate. The key is stabilize, in my mind. Right? In the line of work of government, sometimes what I've learned over the years is slow and steady wins the race, right? Long projection of steady, always below a certain value. I mean, to a certain extent, if you look at competition, right? We only have one competitor to look at, PG&E, and we're winning in both cases. How can we make sure that we consistently, a consistent message, win year after year after year, months after months after months? So I think having that consistent message, and it's also seems to me, Nick, correct me if I'm wrong, it seems to be financially prudent to have that consistency there too. So I think there's a case to be made how that consistency is highly valuable. Not only in terms of messages, but also in terms of budgeting the household as well. If they know they need to spend $3 extra, maybe they won't buy that latte at Starbucks. But at least they know every month that's what they're going to get in terms of savings. So I think that's, to a certain extent, that's important as well, that there's a value in.
So you would advocate for
Consistency.
just 5% throughout the year?
So between 5 and 10, whether or not there is a middle ground somewhere, I think I'm willing to explore that. But I think having that consistency throughout the year. I think there's a lot of value to that. And does it 6% make sense, 7.5, whatever that might be, but I'm willing to explore that, but what I'm hearing is that it would kind of get to the point of splitting hair a little bit. But to me, the consistency is important. And especially when we're talking about $3 a month, roughly.
Director Nash.
If someone could answer for me, do we see our customers using less electricity in the summer months? Because that's going to be the difference.
I believe usually, especially in a more temperate climate zone like this, although Leslie, you may know better than me, generally speaking, commercial usage tends to peak during summer months, air conditioning and all that. Household usage tends to peak during the winter months, families staying over and so forth.
I rest my case.
Yeah. There's a little bit of difference in the territory between San Mateo County and Los Banos. Los Banos does have higher usage in the summer because they have much more, most of the homes there are they're built with air conditioning.
Yeah.
And air conditioning is not a consistent component of the legacy housing stock in San Mateo County. Majority of the homes were built here, pre-air conditioning. And so any air conditioning that's been added, that exists, but it's more temperate here. There's less air conditioning load in the summer in San Mateo County, more in Los Banos.
Director Nash.
Have we ever thought of doing winter rates? In other words, having consistency, but we have regular rates and then we have winter rates during the winter months.
So
Ongoing.
there already are seasonal generation rates. So almost all generation rates are seasonal and have different prices during the summer and the winter. The only exception to that, for the most part, really is the basic residential rate and a couple of things like street lighting where it's sort of pointless. But the basic residential rate, you can choose to take time of use. And in fact, time of use is the default and the standard that most people are on, which does have seasonal rates. So that's all in there already.
All right,
So,
I'm sorry.
okay, so that it's already taken into account.
Yes.
And I guess the one other just comment would be, when we go out to messaging, 5% versus 10% sounds a lot different than an increase in your bills that, $2-3. So just how we message this is really important.
Director Dugan.
If we set ourselves up to have to raise rates in July, what are our disclosure requirements? Do we just slide it onto the bill or do we have to announce this? What does that look like?
We actually don't do, there's no requirement for us to do any special noticing. We don't ever do any special noticing.
When we decrease, we put out a press release.
Yeah. I would consider it as just being part of like our new budget year, and like as part of our new budget, this is the rates for the new budget year. It would be in my mind how, if we were forced to talk about it, how we would talk about it, but we don't have to talk about it.
Okay, that's our practice. When we raise, we just slip it in there. That's kind of counter to what most of us experience at the city level with rate setting. But then, whatever we do, I just think, let's think about it from the marketing perspective, because if we choose to do 10% because it's our 10th year anniversary, and we know we're going to raise in July, then let's message it that way. Hey, 6-month holiday, we're going from 5 to 10%, right? And then there's no surprise come July, and it's not some thing we're slipping on the bill. It's, hey, we celebrated for 6 months and made some hay about it, and then it goes back to where we know it needs to go. That'd be the way to do it. That said, I think I prefer staying at the 5% because I value the consistency, and our role is, I agree, let's not stockpile money, but taking a reserve fund on a steep downward trajectory is just not really what
It's not a
I'm
reserve
used to
fund.
seeing.
We have a reserve fund. Rate stabilization is a totally separate.
Okay, that's fair.
Yeah.
Gwen,
Yeah.
do you have any concern, do you have any thoughts on what a July, if we were to rate, or when we raise rates in July? how would that be any PR, marketing challenges, or you just sort of?
I wasn't seeing it as a PR challenge. I think from a communication standpoint, we can work with either. We're actually working on a rate video right now, because I think somebody said it earlier, like customers are paying attention to the particular moment, right? We're 5% cheaper, we're 10% cheaper, but then there's the longer term story that I think it's important for us to tell, which is we are a public agency that has been making a decision in your best interest over time. And so actually working with Justin, Leslie, another one, we're working on a kind of data visualization of that story. So we can really show our rates have always been lower. And even if
Right.
it sort of bounces from 10%, 5% to 1%, we are always making that decision. And then cumulatively, that delta has been savings to you individually and then to the community. So we talk about this a lot, but we haven't had the visualization to communicate it in a way that I think really can land. So that's in progress right now. And that's one of those important communications that we would have updated. And it has things like, basically our decision for, that 5% rate is is equivalent to 3 days of free electricity over the last 10 years. That's a sort of a 10-year anniversary kind of metric that we're looking at too. So thinking a lot about how to tell that story. And I think either way we can deal with it, because I think that story about how we make decisions around affordability.
If I can speak more broadly too, I think just simply having a small nominal rate increase that when you are already the least expensive option and will continue to be is a lot easier discussion than if you're raising rates above your competitors. So I think we should be able to navigate any challenges with that if that's the decision this committee takes.
One last comment.
By the way, we're not at 5% now. So
We're at 10%.
we're at
Exactly.
10% now.
Yes.
May I
So we're
clarify?
reducing the discount if we go to 5%.
Today, we're at a premium.
Yes, exactly. That's what I was saying. We were
January
at
1.
10%, but we are
Very
much higher.
temporarily, very
This month, yeah.
temporarily.
Is that
Oh,
new?
yeah,
'Cause
today we're
I
higher.
thought we were always 5%.
No.
We historically, but we changed it last year just for,
Okay.
we were in this great financial
Well,
position.
it's been a year and a half, right?
It's been a year, I think, last January, I
But
think.
with the PG&E changing,
January.
it's irrelevant now.
Right.
All right, Director Nash.
Last question.
Last question.
With our new cost of service approach, how often does it make sense are we still planning to, in a good, how often do we change rates?
So ideally, we would want to make our rate change coincident with our budget for the year. So we usually want to change rates in July. We would rather not change rates in January. Obviously, this is a pretty exceptional situation, so we need to, and we plan for that. But I think that's part of why the staff recommendation very tentatively was 10% is consistent with our cost of service. We're meeting our cost of service at that 10% mark.
So from a rate stabilization point and changing once a year at budget time, which would be traditional, we would just stay at this 10% and then reassess with the budget.
Exactly.
Ideally,
Change
that's
rates Now
true.
anyway. We have to change rates now anyway because of what PG&E did. To have a 10%, we would have to change rates in January.
That's correct.
Okay, great, thank you.
Yeah.
Sorry.
But the other thing I think I'd like just for a little extra flavor here is that we did discuss internally last year the opportunity to shift our fiscal year to a calendar year, because it is most common that PG&E changes their rates at the beginning of the year. And so in order to, for a number of reasons to try and kind of align those two, it turned out that the business case, it just didn't make enough of a difference for the hassle factor of shifting our calendar year. But we do talk, and Nick, I know this is one of your favorite topics, is to be able to set rates at the summer, at the fiscal year, and then set it for the entire year with the option to do exactly what we're doing right now, to be responsive to whatever happens with PG&E in January. Because one thing I would like to confirm with all of you is a ongoing sort of policy direction to maintain a discount to PG&E at all times is, across a year, unless, we just simply can't do it. And that is not the case for us. So we do strive, no matter what happens in that January, we may have to change rates in order to stay below PG&E. And that's what we have been doing the last couple of years.
All right.
Marty, where do you come out on the rates?
What's your thought?
Yeah, I've been patiently waiting.
Yes, you have.
So first of all, I wanted to thank staff. I mean, this is a very complicated issue. I see both sides to this. In addition, it's this board's ability to put aside the stabilization fund. That we had the money.
Yeah.
Let's put it in this fund because we're gonna need it. We wind up needing it. Our staff was able to get us within a really great position in what those needs are gonna be, and here we are. Being able to decide, should we give a 5% discount or a 10% discount? That's how fortunate we are with all the work that's happened. And I wanted to thank everybody for their comments because I could be swayed to the 5, I could go to the 10, but here's what it comes down for me. Rates are high. People are struggling with deciding what to pay for. I know at my home, I'm checking and I've reduced the thermostat to like, hey, we don't need that. We're out of the house. I'm paying more attention to it. And fortunately, I have the ability to do that. And a number of people do not. Whether they're aware of their PG&E, whether they're aware of PCE, they're not aware of the future of Westlight Energy. But the issue is our customers and how expensive things are. I think acknowledging that we do have the funds, that we providing that 10%, the messaging, we could work on the messaging coming out of the gate, that we were able to give this 10% discount. And we're gonna look at it in the future. And the video that you're already working on, I mean, we're already there, we're getting there. It's a bigger win, I think, for PCE, for our customers to give the 10% discount. And everybody knows things are gonna go up, but we need to help get that message out about what we're doing now. We have enough money in that fund, so my preference would be to go ahead and continue the 10%, get the messaging right. And then as we go forward, we know that they're gonna go up and going to that 5%. If that's where we land, that's where we land. So the optics, we can figure that out. But listening to our customers, even though it's $2 or $3 difference, right? People aren't thinking about that. They're just looking at their bill, seeing that it probably gone up $100, $200, because people want to be comfortable. So that's my feeling. This is a recommendation to the full board, and I'm sure we're gonna have another interesting discussion there. So that's my position on it, and it's up for this board to decide. And first, want to take public comment, right? And we don't have anybody online. I don't see anybody with their hands up, so I'm looking for a motion.
Well, I'll move that we stay with 10%.
Second.
We have a first, we have a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
I'm gonna say aye too.
So we have 4. Those with nay.
I just, quick question, if we're at 10% now and we're gonna stay at 10%, I mean, I could support that, but there's no marketing opportunity there, right? That's just us doing the same thing, and we happen to know we can't do it all year, and we're certainly not gonna market the raise in July, so basically, there's no marketing opportunity here, right? We're just gonna stay 10% and do a mid-year increase.
Well, we haven't decided that. We're gonna
Yeah.
evaluate it.
And Gwen, could you comment on that? Because I actually do think there is a marketing opportunity here. But I hear your point too, Director Dugan.
Yeah,
Gwen?
we are planning a press release doing a landing page that talks about rates with also that rate video, hoping to have that rate video actually ready by January 22nd in order to support all of the communications. So there is a marketing opportunity. And I think, we know that even a 5 to 10% discount is not a lot. And so I don't want us to be overly self-congratulatory. Again, we are making decisions in your best interest. And that's, because we're a public agency. So that's the framing around it.
If there was a specific marketing opportunity, I think it would be to go to 5 now and then go to 10 in July for 6 months. That would be an actual marketing opportunity when we're actually launching the new brand, in my opinion. I could go either way on this. I don't think there's a marketing opportunity staying at 10%. I just don't.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but just so we have a clear record, we're in the middle of a vote.
Right.
So the discussion has already been closed. If we can just round out the vote and then we can,
Well, I
Bring
mean,
it
there
back.
might be a alternate proposal made. I mean,
Sure.
we're- this is a
there may be.
deliberation. app.
Would you like
Absolutely.
to make an amendment that it be,
I'm not gonna make an alternate proposal, but that would be the next step if someone wanted to.
You may stop me, Jennifer, but I guess what I'm wondering is if the idea is we do have a stable rate, it is 10%. And we're not going to, we have a stable rate, but we will be looking at it in the future. I can support that. Because that's the whole idea of consistency of the stability. If we are going to, anyway, that feels different to me than if we're saying, wow, we're 10%, and then later we drop it to 5%.
I would think, I haven't talked to Gwen about this, but I would think there's a big PR opportunity to say we are decreasing our rates by 47%. And you will be paying a 10% discount. I think there's as good an opportunity at 5%. We're decreasing rates by 42%. And you're going to be at a 5% discount. But I would hope we take advantage of this opportunity regardless. It's a big decrease. Yes, we're doing it to match PG&E, but we won't say that in the PR. We'll just say we're decreasing your rates. We're doing everything we can to lower your costs. Rates are going down by 46%.
I did want to point out too, if we lower rates by that much, we're talking about, if I'm doing the mental math correctly, 6.6 cents would be a 5.8 cent reduction from current rates. You're looking at 32.1 cents versus last year with us even was 33.9 cents. So customers would actually be paying less for electricity year over year, despite these other PG&E increases.
so we need to get the vote completed.
Right, Director DeGolia's adoption of the 10% as staff recommended is still on the floor. So we've collected the yes votes and now we're looking for the no vote.
Do we have a count?
Yeah.
Now we have 4.
I'm abstaining at the moment unless there's an alternative proposal.
Okay, so those that oppose, you need a minute?
But I just want to, Nick, you said a moment ago during the discussion. If we go with the 10% today, by June, July, summer, you're gonna come back with a strong case to change the rate.
I will. Remember this conversation. I'm fine financially with the 10% discount for the next 5 months. It's not a huge difference.
Right.
I just want to make sure that when we come back in June, there isn't an immediate knee-jerk reaction about an increase.
And you
Nick,
have
to
been
be-
consistent.
Yeah.
You've told us that many times,
Yeah.
which is good.
And just to be clear, when you say it's not a big deal, $7 million, that also means it's only a $7 million savings to our customers.
Yeah, it's exactly
That's what
the same.
we're talking about.
Totally, yeah.
It's not meaningful. That's the point.
And it's not.
And just that we're
Worry about
clear.
the discussion.
Yeah, I think we should,
We can
if
talk.
there's an alternative proposal after the vote closes, then we can entertain that. If there's abstentions, then let's collect
I'll
those.
abstain for now. Thank you.
So,
Yes.
yes, so we have, that makes, okay, so we got the 2 abstentions, 5. Do we have anybody opposing?
That's it. There's
That's
only
it?
7 of us.
There's only 7 of us. Okay, we have a vote, it passes. thank you for this conversation. This is only a recommendation to the board, so more questions will come up and we'll get there like we got through this. Moving on, item 7, marketing update from Glenn Rose.
Okay, rates to marketing.
Whatever.
Good times.
We got there.
Most interesting vote ever in that NPCE history.
Okay,
Should
so
have put the right meeting.
got about 6 slides. What we're trying to do is over communicate the plan, where we're at, the sort of things that we know right now, and then the things that are going to be sort of more solidified as we go through this process. So at a high level, this is the big picture rollout and approach for the Westlight transition. The idea is that each phase sort of builds, and we're sequencing the work to prioritize customer clarity and operational readiness. So the phases move from planning and alignment, phase 1, to a soft launch, with customers starting to see the name as early as mid-June and as late as mid-July. And then a broader public-facing set of activities around the 10-year anniversary. And then finally, that last phase, phase 4, being more of a steady state brand awareness. As we move forward, we're layering in testing, engagement, and broader visibility. So we're doing work with the voice of customer to really shape what this is going to look like, insanity check as we go. We're going to be including feedback from community partners, past champions. We're doing customer focus groups to help us see what's landing and then what's going to need adjustment. Kirsten Grun is our Associate Director of Marketing. She's really leading the brand and the marketing campaigns piece, the media. And then Kirsten Andrews Schwind, Associate Director of Community Relations. She's really leading the community engagement and the voice of customer efforts. And we're all meeting really, really regularly and staying very tightly aligned so that what we build creatively matches what we're hearing on the ground. So over communication is one of these themes this year internally. So then this shows what we're thinking about in terms of touch points for the board. So we really want to lean heavily on the marketing subcommittee, which good overlap here today. So working closely with the marketing subcommittee in Q1 and Q2, really starting to do visual identity work. That work gets underway this week. And then we're going to be working on the discovery, planning, and then really getting that campaign strategy more clear over the next month. And that would also be in bringing to the marketing subcommittee. And then coming to the full board for another update in March. See where we're at on that visual identity and the campaign strategy. And then we're also planning a roadshow to member jurisdictions between March and June, so nobody is surprised about what's going on.
Just a quick question. The roadshow is like to where? To council meetings or?
Yeah,
Okay.
council
Yeah.
meetings.
Thank you.
And sorry, just to
You wanna say
footnote
more?
that, as part of the road show is a show, but also we have to have the individual councils approve the name change. That's a part of our JPA. So that'll, each director, each clerk of the board will be presented with a nice little package for folks to do that quickly in the context of the meeting. But that'll be part of the roadshow as well.
And it'll be an opportunity to talk about the 10-year benefits, to talk about the sort of the reasons for the name change and how we're going to be handling that transition.
I'm not anticipating issues, but does it have to be unanimous across councils?
It's just an approval, so it can live on consent in my world, although I don't manage the agendas for your individual community. And there's nothing about unanimous consent, just approval.
Just approval, and do all councils, do all cities, entities
Yes,
have to approve it? What if
Yes.
one does not?
then we would have a problem in terms of changing the particular paragraph in the JPA. I don't.
It has to be unanimous.
It doesn't say, it says that each of the member jurisdictions have to approve any changes to where our name lives in the JPA. So I'm not going to say that that's needs to be unanimous. We haven't got there yet, and I don't foresee any problems based on the board's vote regarding the name. But we're going to have to revisit it if there's issues from one particular jurisdiction that doesn't
The
approve.
JPA amendments require 21 cities to approve and the council.
Yes, and it's actually a level above the JPA amendments because there's a specific paragraph where we adopt our name, and the name itself requires this extra step, which is the individual authorization by each of the member jurisdictions.
So we're like the European Union.
One city theoretically could throw a wrench into this.
Potentially, I mean, we hope that that doesn't happen, and I don't foresee that happening. And in the event that it does, I think we have, some tools in our toolkit to work with that. But that's kind of why we're front loading the roadshow part, just to make sure that there's no obstacles.
May I make a comment
CEO,
here?
oh, sorry, go ahead, CEO Sean.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you,
I
Chair.
see your hand over there.
I do apologize, by the way, for not being there in person. It was an unfortunate thing I couldn't avoid today. But I do want to just acknowledge, Director Nash, your question. The way we are planning to present this is really in the context of the much bigger kind of 10-year anniversary and very exciting direction going forward. The JPA changed in the new name will be framed as administrative, which is really what it is. We have to have them approving it so that we can continue to operate in the same great way under a new name and banner. It will not be presented in any way, to be honest with you, as a debatable item, right? Because our board has already approved that. So that's why we're not just sort of putting it out there without quite a lot of additional context when we come to your councils. So hopefully it won't be an issue. Thank you.
Director DeGolia?
Yeah, I think that I don't see any reason why this wouldn't go on to consent in each of our cities.
Yeah.
But I can also foresee that one or more council members could ask the same question that came up to our board about Peninsula clean energy, and are you running away from being clean and so on. There could be some questions that come up. So I think in order to help us ensure that it does go on to consent, that we're going to need some guidance from marketing that we can use in the event one of our council members suggests that we pull it off of consent.
Yeah.
Great idea.
Director Nash?
And actually,
I'm sorry,
Yeah.
I missed that.
I concur with what you're saying, Rick. Also, simply in that, whatever is given to each city, making very clear the point, the problem we have distinguishing from PG&E speaks volumes, because that comes up every time I mention PCE. And I think people will appreciate that.
Yes, same thing?
same thing.
Okay.
Yeah, we have a set of messaging talking points, so make sure we share those out.
I'll just add, I shared it with my council already and council comments, they all seem supportive, and I would just suggest we all bring it up ahead of time before it becomes a big decision they could think about, right? Just a good idea to let them know it's already done.
And I shared it and everyone was puzzled.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Interesting.
yeah.
And they did understand the PG&E piece, but I think having a good solid report that we can all hand to, have on the consent calendar that explains all this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Be good.
Our plan is to be there, Gwen, I think at councils between the months of, I think we talked about starting mid-March and
Yep.
doing a blitz,
Mhm.
being done by May,
Yep.
which then allows us to plan for joint rate mailers and other things. So I'll turn it back to Gwen, but that is a pretty tight turnaround, and there will be 3 of us looping out to various councils. So we'll see you soon.
Director Nash?
Just so we can, it would be good to let everyone know so everyone can get it on their agenda. They have
Yeah,
agendas.
Mark Hirschman is leading that charge.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. So community events and engagement. So this is going to stay core in 2026. So in addition to the already, I think, 100+ events that community relations participates in some way every year, we're also planning a small number of more visible events that are tied to the rebrand and the 10-year anniversary. So we're exploring up to 5 community activations. These are still very much in ideation. But essentially what we're looking at are activations, things in the community that we can do that combine clean energy, art, and celebration. So things like public art. You know, we talked about a mural contest, block parties, a marquee community event. So we're thinking about what those 5 community activations could be. And that's something we would kind of bring to the marketing subcommittee. And then we're also planning 3 signature events that align with like policy leadership and the rollout. So we're talking about a policy forum and office warming, and then a climate tech right sizing event as well.
Can you define what a policy forum is?
Yeah, so we're still working on defining what that is, but some of the thought would be, maybe a full day to half day event where we gather together and we really talk about, I don't know, Sean, if we want to talk about content, but our right sizing thought leadership, our thought leadership on, advancing renewable energy procurements, or any of these things that we're leading on, but then really bringing in regulators, local policymakers, and then using it as a moment, maybe even at sunset as the sun is going down, with the west light, sort of using that as an opportunity to both say, this is what we're doing on thought leadership, and this is how we're going to be working with everyone. And then, transitioning and having a reception.
Yep. It's meant to be a combination of education, celebration of 10 years, and unveiling of the new name, with hopefully the sun setting and a reception at the end. We're still working on it, but it would be including, as Gwen said, our regulators, our state and local elected officials, including, of course, you all, our key community partners, and others sort of as we determine. But hopefully going to be at the San Mateo Community College. I think that's called the Skyline Room, maybe. We'll see.
Oh, so beautiful.
Yeah.
Fairlawn Room.
Yes.
In
So,
San Bruno?
no, where is that campus?
I think it is the Fairlawn.
Yeah, okay, just confirming the Fairlawn Room at Skyline
Fairlawn
College
Room.
is unbelievable.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
So more to say about this, but we really wanted it, we don't know yet if it would be a full day or a half day, but we wanted to combine not just the celebration piece, but have some, meat on the bones to talk about, the key things that are going on in the energy industry, perhaps even get a speaker to come in and talk about what's going on writ large in the state of California as a draw for people to come and learn something, and then also celebrate what we're up to. So that's the current thinking on that.
Director Mackin?
Could we consider that this would be helpful in our new community forum, making it a forum event, along with the duality of what we're going forward with?
We put that on the docket. Yeah. An idea.
Just 2 things. One is, as I sat down avoiding cleaning the house in early January, I, mapped out my calendar for the year, and I'm sure a lot of us have done the same, and I don't even have a day job. So the earlier you can get dates to us to put on our calendars, even if you don't know what it's gonna be. But the earlier you can get dates to us would be fantastic. And then also, I know it's us, so we don't need co-sponsors, but I'm just thinking about the county Office of Sustainability and the Sustainable San Mateo County getting these on their calendars, as well as obviously great partners with us.
Yeah.
Gwen, these are all in the fall, correct? I'm not sure about
Yes.
the right sizing. Yes. So they're all-
The
yeah.
Right Size Climate Tech Showcase is actually in April.
April,
And that
okay.
won't be done that'll be done as PCE, actually, not Westlight.
But then the other
policy
2
forum
are
would be fall. Mhm.
October and November respectively for the other 2, I believe.
October.
Yeah, thank you, Sean.
Cool.
Okay, so we have two partners that we're bringing on to help us with all of the work that we have planned. So for the visual identity and flowing that all through the website update, there's Owen. And then for campaigns, media and events, there's Good Stuff Partners. Both of them have a lot of public sector experience. With Owen, we're really excited about the work they've done, say with like Metro in Portland, as well as the American Bird Conservatory. And then Good Stuff Partners has done a lot of work with the County of San Mateo, with their sustainability department, with City of Menlo Park on home electrification. So really good both for the quality of their campaigns, but also just their relationships with the other cities as well. And so because community engagement and partnership is so important to this, we just thought they were going to be a really strong partner for us. Okay. Any questions on that? So for Good Stuff Partners, this contract, which again encompasses campaigns, media, planning and buying, and events, it exceeds that threshold and it'll come to the board for approval. And so the not to exceed amount estimated at $788,950. That covers professional services and outside supplier costs. Importantly, it's not a fixed scope that's locked in today. As you've heard, there's a lot of planning we still need to do. So we have these ideas. We need to do a lot of work on the discovery, the planning and the strategy. And then once we have that, we can actually really start working on what does that look like in a detailed scope. So we don't expect to spend that. That represents the ceiling. If we do a half-day policy forum instead of a full-day policy forum, clearly that sort of costs go down. If we do more static, asset creation versus video, those costs go down. So this represents a higher ceiling, assuming like the broadest visibility we might go after for all of the things that we're planning. But again, we need to get down into it once the contract starts so we can do that scoping. Finally, next steps and questions. So right now, January to February, we're really firming up that transition timeline. So like I said, we're going to be on customers will start seeing us between June and July. We need to nail that down, as well as all of the work that needs to happen in order to really get operationally ready for that, including the road show and conversations with member agencies, all of that. The brand identity getting started immediately. And then that research and strategy so that we can really start to lock down the events, the campaign platform, and all of that gets underway in the next few weeks. As soon as we get the contract with Good Stuff Partners signed, we bring that to the board at the end of this month. And then we're just keeping an eye on what risks we need to manage in order to meet these timelines. So actually finalizing the brand, making sure we can hit the regulatory and legal milestones, coordinating with PG&E to get the name on the bill changed, and then system readiness in general. So that's the overview. Happy to take any more questions.
Yes, Director Nash.
Thank you. How much is the contract for Owen?
So we have the visual identity we've scoped at 85,000. And that represents a ceiling as well. And then the website is 15,000 in order to scope what needs to be done. So right now, what we know of that engagement is going to be, and then we have a 20% contingency. So what we know of that engagement is that it's going to be 120,000. Mm-hmm. And then we have to figure out what the website updates are going to be. So that could be up to 240, but I don't expect it to be that high. Again, it's like, we know the visual identity, that's pretty standard. Like we did an RFP, we got 30 proposals. Pretty much everyone said that that's what it costs to do a visual identity. And then the 15,000 helps us scope really what it means for the website. So those are the two hardest costs there.
I am just feeling, especially after our last discussion about rates, that I'm more in a little bit of a belt tightening mode.
Sure.
And am concerned about how this plays with customers. if they see too much just celebration work, things that are not actually helping their bottom line and their bills.
Yeah.
Which I know is a tension, I mean, with
It's a
just
tension.
how we
Yeah.
do this, and PCE always, you always do such an amazing job rolling things out, communicating, all of that. So I'm
Yeah.
feeling a little bit concerned about the overall $1 million price tag with all of this, realizing that we definitely have to put in some money to just do the rebranding properly and everything. So I'm really curious how others feel.
I would say we're an improvement from PG&E having Paula Poppy on TV all the time with the shovels. And asking for constant rate increases and showing us where they're undergrounding things. I mean, we've been so conservative on self-promotion. And this is a chance for us to actually say something in our own behalf.
I had a question, which I think I might know the answer. One, I guess, just related to PG&E and the bill. Seems like it should be easy, but it's PG&E. So, are we concerned that they will say, oh, no, it takes a year to change your name? The second is, would they consider just a one, an insert in the bill, whether it's that size that you had or full size that just announces you may have noticed a name change for PCE customers to Westlight Energy. Is that something we could ask of them, or is that crazy to ask anything of them?
I'll look at Leslie. So
Yeah,
the
it's
first question was how long it takes to get the change on the
To
bill.
continue, yeah, so to get the change on the bill is, so in our PG&E rep is asking us for about a 5-month lead in order to get onto the IT schedule to make sure that we get that, programmed at the time frame that we want it programmed, right? Does it actually take 5 months to program it? No. But it's that the lead time to make sure we get our spot secured within the IT schedule, for PG&E to do that update. For the bill insert, it's a reasonable ask to make. Is it actually a functional thing that would happen? No, because there's been a lot of conversation in the past about bill inserts, especially around like enrollments and other opportunities, for CCAs to put things in the PG&E bill. It's and what comes back is usually, they cannot guarantee a timeline of when it would be in, because there are things like regulatory notices and stuff like that take precedent over any other marketing pieces or anything like that. So you could get bumped, even if you got a scheduled, notice timeframe. And then the CCA would be responsible for the additional sort of postage and marketing costs, so even like a buck slip, which is your traditional way you would put into a bill insert. If you get anywhere close to the normal postage line, you'd have to pay for that out-of-pocket costs on that, and that would be potentially, several $100,000 for that, very nominal, bill insert. The other thing is a significant amount of customers are getting their bills online now. So you're not actually getting a paper bill with inserts. And you do still get the inserts, digitally, but not very many people are going into the extra file link to open up that PDF and like scan through those bill inserts. So it'd be much more effective for us to do our own, if we wanted to actually get a piece of paper in front of people, to do our own direct mail campaign. Yeah.
We've also heard information from PG&E in the past too, that only about 1% to 2% of customers actually look at those bill inserts.
That's just us.
Yeah,
And then is there a way to where we have, like, looking at the bill where it says Peninsula Clean Energy, we'll say Westside Energy, just in terms of our name, to put an asterisk that says, formerly known as Peninsula Clean Energy?
There are a
or
couple
something?
places that we control the messaging. The easiest place that we control the messaging on a monthly basis that's quick enough to us to update is the on bill. There's a little sort of on bill area, which right now it reads something like, you're receiving, lower energy or, cleaner energy at lower rates, something like that, right? And that's sort of this sort of standard message that's on there. Like That's something that we can update pretty easily because it's part of Calpine's file that they send to
Okay.
PG&E to put on the bill print. On the right side, which we call the swim lane, that's longer to update and that's another area, that's usually about a 30-day lead, to update over there, and it's not easy to, it's not as easy to change that messaging on that, what we call the swim lane on the right side, but the on-bill space, we can update that message, pretty well. So we can say that, what we want to say there, and we can change it, a couple months later if we want to.
Okay,
Yeah.
oh, that's great to know. Thank you.
Yeah.
And thank you in advance for dealing with this.
Any more?
No, unless there are any more questions. In terms of the concern about the spend, there are just things that we have levers around, right? So the campaign scale, the production, the number of videos, static assets, that kind of stuff. And so again, we set the NTE so that it's the sort of ceiling, aggressive upper end, and we can tune it. And I do share the concern about being overly loud and splashy in this current environment. So we're being very sensitive to that. And like a marketing media plan would definitely reflect that, like going more heavily on community radio, bus wraps, instead of like digital cable TV kind of stuff, right? So I think we're going to be thinking definitely about what those touch points look like in a very sensitive way.
And Gwen, is it not true that some of the 10-year anniversary work that we're doing obviously is integrated, so overlaps into this budget, right? So
Yes.
it's my understanding that it's not all just about the new name. This is a number of things that get layered in, correct?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that's why we have that narrative framework being developed now. Is like, how do we tell that coherent story across the year? That's like, we are the same agency. We've been doing this for 10 years and we're bringing you 10 more years of decarbonization with our partners and the community. So we need to really figure out what that narrative framework is and what the campaign platform is going to look like. But that definitely is it really is about the 10-year anniversary. That is the moment. It's not, customers don't care about Westlight versus Peninsula Clean Energy, but they are going to care that we've been doing this for 10 years and that we're continuing to do it.
Yeah.
All right, so this is a discussion item. I do need to take public comment. It is past 12 o'clock and I want to be respectful of everybody's time. I know some people need to leave. So I don't see any public.
Does it say action on the agenda? Is that?
I thought it was action.
Yeah,
Oh.
action to approve the good.
Okay, I apologize in the
Yeah.
presentation and said discussion.
Oh, our bad.
My fault there. Thank you for that. Any public comment? Nope. Oh, we do have public comment?
Oh, no.
I'll speak to Gwen.
Okay. All right. I'm looking for
Motion to approve, good.
The good stuff.
The good stuff.
Contracts.
First,
I'll second.
second, all in favor? Aye. All opposed? Unanimous. All right. We still have time for a CEO report.
Really quick.
Really quick.
Yes. Brianna, will you go back to that slide? I mentioned earlier, I do apologize that I'm not there in person. I certainly will be, hopefully next time. The first item up, if you can move the slide deck back, is just to welcome John Dugan to the executive committee. You might all recall that Director Dugan replaces Director Lorraine. It is also going to be the case that Director Gaucher will be leaving the executive committee because she will be leaving our board. So we don't know who will replace her, but that is TBD and to come. The next is to let you know that as a result of SB 707, which passed the legislature in the 2025 session, Audit and Finance and Executive Committee are able to meet by Zoom 100% of the time upon approval of a resolution to the board every 6 months. The feedback we've had so far with some of the folks we've talked to has been largely positive, mainly because it just makes things easier and maybe deals with some of our periodic quorum issues. But it does require a resolution of the board. So we are planning to bring it to the board on January 22nd, unless there is discussion about that. So If there is, please raise your hand. And then just a general reminder, because I know there may have been a little confusion here, that a nominating committee for the officer positions will be formed at the January board meeting. Interested candidates for the officer positions then should let the nominating committee know of their interest in being considered at that time. So just a reminder that it's January, and then the idea would be that recommendations would be brought at February or March meetings, and then there would be the transition to the new chair and vice chair. So just a reminder about the process there. That is it. Thank you, Chair Medina, unless there are any questions. Thank you.
We do have a question.
I would just say, I'm in support of however, the board decides and the committee decides we want to meet. As I mentioned, I don't have a day job, so it's much easier for me to get here, and the new office will be even easier. But I would ask that, we maybe try to, once a year or once every 6 months to meet in person, because I think it does help.
And just to clarify, we will have a space open for the meeting each and every time. And so any members who would like to come in person, I don't think it answers your question completely, but any members who want to be in person are more than invited to
Will
do
there
so.
still be donuts?
I don't want to guarantee, but I hope so.
We
I
know how
hope
to
so.
bribe people to get in the event.
Double the donuts, maybe. You
I
never
think
know.
that's a great idea. Director Ragsdale, I think that's great. And listen, when we bring this to the board in January, in a couple of weeks, if the feeling is that we don't want to do this, there's no obligation. Certainly, we just were thinking that it was making things easier for some folks.
Thank you.
All right. Any public comment? Seeing none, thank you all for this, I'm sorry,
Don't forget committee members reports.
committee member reports, yes. No one? Fantastic. All right, thank you all for your time today, great meeting, and be safe. Talk to you later.
Thank you all. Have a great day.
Take care, Sean.